Hey, Corey here. This one's called Oxygen, and I just wanted to share a story about self-care. So for any of you that have flown commercially before takeoff, the stewardess, or now a lot of the newer planes have the audio and video that runs right in the seat. But anyway, you get the whole safety rundown. And part of that safety rundown is the oxygen. If conditions cause for it, the oxygen mask will fall down. And as it says in the instructions, and as we've heard for years and years and years, the most important thing to do is for you to put your oxygen mask on first before putting on the child next to you or the elderly person. We need to put it on ourselves first, or we're not going to be awake to help the elderly person or the child or whoever that's next to us. And I've heard that many, many times over the years, but I heard that about 8 years ago on a flight, and it was after I had gone through some life stuff and anyway, waiting for takeoff, and that same old safety thing came on about the oxygen mask. And over time, I've always kind of referenced that, at least in these last 8 years, when it comes to self-care and that oxygen mask example. If I'm not good, I can't be good for anybody else. So when it comes to self-care, when I was younger, and probably even to this day, but for sure when I was younger, I was horrible at taking advice. In fact, when I reflect on all my years, I was given a lot of really good advice over the years, especially as a young man. Good advice from my parents, from my grandparents, my uncles, other people that I knew. And I struggle to find any time where I actually took that good advice that was given to me. So I think for me, and maybe you can relate to this, a lot of times we just have to experience the hard thing, even if we're given the advice, even if we're given the warnings, even if we're given everything to look out for, and even when we're given examples of hardship because of mistakes people made or things they did wrong, and they're trying to teach us and tell us, hey, you can avoid this bad thing if you do this. And for me anyway, it's like, screw that. I end up going through it anyway, and maybe that's just the way it's got to be. But I think about self-care and how difficult that can be. And again, maybe you can relate to this. But there was a time in my life where, especially as a young man and having a wife and starting a family and having small children, it always seemed like you put yourself last. And I know from my experience, mothers do that as well. My wife has done that as well. And I think it almost feels like the right thing to do to put others before yourself. And I think there's times where there may be emergency, unplanned, events that come at us unexpectedly, and we probably don't really know how we'll react in those situations till they happen. And then there's other times where it's like I just described. It's starting a family, starting a career, getting into all those things, and maybe thinking that your own self-care, your own self-well-being kind of takes a back seat, kind of comes in somewhere way down the list of priorities. It's pretty low, and it feels like the right thing to do. And so a lot of us do that, and I did that, and I think that's okay to a certain extent. I mean, I feel like part of my duty as a husband and a father and a team member is to put all those people in such regard that I would do whatever I could for them. And I think part of that is in us, or it's in me, and you can maybe relate to that. I think part of that's good. But what I wanted to talk about on this video is just, if we forget about our own well-being and we forget about our own self-care, maybe we can do pretty well for a while, maybe even for a number of years. You know, when I look back on my life, I think there was probably a period of 10 years where I think I did pretty damn good, you know, when it came to family and career and kind of everything. Certainly not taking care of myself through all that, but it just seems like we can get a certain number of years out of that before things become a problem. And how long we can go that way probably depends on the person. But for me, there was a period of years where it was 100 miles an hour all the time. And it was sacrificing, you know, to climb that ladder in the career, or to always put family, try to put it ahead of myself. And again, I think there's a period of time where that all worked and that was good and it was the right thing to do. But specifically for this talk, if we get to a point where we're neglecting ourselves to the point where it's affecting us mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it may be, we're starting to use substances maybe to cope with stress or to cope with things. Maybe we're giving up certain healthy things to keep us in balance. I always think about the balance that I need to try to maintain, and there's times where I will purposely and knowingly put that balance out of whack. I try not to do that so much anymore nowadays. But if we get to the point where we're neglecting ourselves and putting all these other things ahead of us to the point where it's hurting us, and it's hurting us in all these ways, then it reminds me of that oxygen mask from the safety training that you get on every flight. If I don't take care of myself, then I'm not going to be good for anybody else. I'm not going to be good for my wife. I'm not going to be good for my kids. Now I have grandchildren. I'm not going to be good for my grandchildren. I'm not going to be good for my team at work. I'm not going to be good for anything, really, if I keep declining, or if at some point I don't implement things to keep my own well-being in check. Excuse me. So that's really what this is about. Sometimes I think self-care can be taken too far, used as an excuse to get out of things. But I do, at least for me at this point in my life, I do value the importance of self-care. I need to keep sharp mentally, as sharp as I can be. I'm still pretty much kind of a dumbass at times, but I'm an experienced dumbass, and I have built endurance, and I've gotten experience, and I've learned things. And so one of the most important things I think I've learned in probably just the last 5 or 6 years is really self-care. And it doesn't mean that has to really take away too much. What I found is it really doesn't take away at all from my work or my family or anything. In fact, it enhances it, and it almost brings me to a new level in all those areas. So it's like a win-win. I need to take care of myself in every way that I can, do the best I can. It doesn't mean that I'm great at anything. It doesn't mean maybe that I'm really good at anything, but if I can do the best that I can and try to take care of myself and do certain things that work for me, that keep me good is the word I'll use, then I will be there for my family, and I will be there for all these things in life, and I'll be there in much more of a way than if I just kept sacrificing all the time to the point of where I'm run down and can't be there, or can't be there completely and intentionally. So for whatever that's worth, I hope you got something out of it. But for me, that simple oxygen and the oxygen story, the oxygen mask story, I use that so many times and it's usually guys, and it's usually guys, middle-aged guys is usually the conversation. And I use that to kind of relate or try to get something in their head that, hey, at some point you got to start taking care of yourself too, or you're not going to help anybody else. In fact, you may take away from them. They may have to take care of you. And that may happen. The best that we do, trying to take care of ourselves, we still may end up in a way where others have to take care of us. But if we don't intentionally do things to maintain our well-being and make a discipline of it and make it something we can do long-lasting, if we don't do that, there will come a point, at least for me, my experience, and I've seen it in others, there will come a point where you cannot maintain that level of 100-mile-an-hour sacrifice and put everything else in front of your own well-being. There will come a time that doesn't work. So if you get something out of that, great. Like I said, I use that story, and a lot of times it can make somebody think, yeah, that's true. You know, if the plane is in turbulence and things aren't going good and I don't put my mask on and I'm trying to help these other people and I pass out, I'm not any good, you know? Well, if I don't take care of myself the best that I can now, for me personally, if I don't stay sober, if I don't stay fit, if I don't stay what I would call in the arena, if I don't stay active, if I'm not involved in the things that I've deemed important in my life, if I don't stay in all those things and keep all those things going, then I'm not going to be any good to anybody else eventually. So that's all I got on that. Take care.